Hey Joe, how you doing?
Yeah, Michael, I'm doing great today. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. I can't wait to have this conversation. 5 reasons you need third-party maintenance.
Are we going to limit it to five? Okay,
No,
we're going to.
I I
We
already
might freeze. We might
I,
freestyle a few extra ones in there
I
that
already
you
had
don't
a
know.
sixth in mind
Okay,
as a
good,
bonus. Yeah.
good.
Um, yeah. So if you don't know, Joe is our director of global services, and essentially built our program from the ground up.
Mhm.
So he knows quite a bit about what there is to know about third-party maintenance. And the big one that you and I were talking about when we first put this list together was number one, you're spending too much money. If we can cut your maintenance bill in half or more, why can't your OEM do that?
Yeah, I mean, everyone kind of knows this already that the OEM
Sure.
maintenance, no matter you're talking EMC or Cisco or whatever it might be, it's a cash cow for the OEMs. So the consumer, the customer, they need to try and figure out to make sure they're not overspending, right? And there's plenty of areas when you're talking overall IT maintenance in the data center, at the network, or wherever it might be, where there is definitely some overspend that we find in just about every environment. So what we're trying to do in every conversation that we have, and anytime we're trying to help our customers save that money, it's trying to find those areas where they're overspending, because there is a need for support and there is a need for the OEM. So there is great value in that. But then there's other areas that we want to try and help separate that so that's not all blended together as a one size fits all type of scenario. So the gist between the conversations, which usually are longer conversations, is let us help you find those areas where the OEM is overcharging or not delivering, so you can take those savings and apply it somewhere else, or just take the savings and make sure you're not having to skimp in areas where you shouldn't be skimping.
Right. And that's a good segue into number two we had is that software access is free
Yeah,
or publicly available, or in some cases no longer necessary, right?
correct. So most organizations, you go in, you take a look at right everything in the data center to the edge to the backbone and all those different areas, and try and figure out what are you actually getting. So typically when you put maintenance on a device, regardless if it's OEM or PivIT or what it might be, you've got three reasons for it: access to technical support, software updates, and hardware replacement in case of hardware failing. And depending on the type of hardware, the priority of those three things change. And what most organizations don't realize is there's a lot of their infrastructure that has access to free software updates and unlimited software updates on current generation products. The OEM and the sales reps typically don't do that, because if you remove the software piece from that device, it sort of like decreases the importance of having it there, particularly if it's a commodity type device where in all reality they just need it replaced if it's broken.
Right. Right.
um, and then there's other devices which, the product life cycle from every OEM typically is 3 to 5 years, right? That's 3 to 5 years. So depending on where in that life cycle you buy the device, you're going to hit an end of sale date during that process. And then every OEM is sort of similar in the timelines, but once it hits the end of sale date, it then kind of goes through this process over a couple of years before they just completely kill off the product. So
They
depending on
want
where
you
it
to buy
is,
something new at that point.
yes. And some OEMs are more aggressive than others.
Sure.
But in the same way as we kind of do this, we take a real high level understanding of every one of our customers, networks, infrastructure, data centers, everything in the above. And we'll highlight those because a lot of times, particularly in the really sensitive areas in the data center,
Hmm.
you'll see like, nope, sorry, I have to have software updates. If something happens, I have to have software updates. What most people are surprised by is if it's a 5-year-old device, if it's been there 5 years, if you go to the OEM's website, you can see the end of life, you can see those timelines, you can see all those areas where, lo and behold, the OEM doesn't provide software updates either because they've killed off the product line.
Right. They're done.
They're done.
Yeah.
So, and it's not always the case, but that's part of the reason why in these conversations we come together, we try and bring together our logic, we bring together all the scenarios so that people can see, if I'm expecting that when I buy a maintenance contract, I get all three of those things. What if you're not getting software updates, or what if they're available for free? Does that change the dynamic? Does it change the logic in terms of what am I getting, what I'm paying for?
Yeah. Exactly. And to that point, that 3 to 5 year equipment, it at year 5, year 6, it may be doing exactly what you still needed to do. So number 3 that we had was, hey, you've got some older gear in your network, and that's totally okay, right? And then that also kind of goes into number 4, is that these end of life dates are influencing refresh cycles. And sometimes that's okay because technology moves on, and sometimes it's totally unnecessary. So number 3, you've got old gear in your network, and number 4, we don't want these end of life dates influencing what you do with your network. We want you to do that, right?
Right. Yeah. Because if you think about it, I'll use 2 examples. So a device that's very software centric in mind and is like almost one of the more important areas of your network, your firewalls, right? So your security devices.
Yeah.
More than likely, those are getting frequent software updates. More than likely, I mean, you've got to probably have more current gen, next generation type firewall devices, appliances, and OEMs sitting out in front of your network to protect it all. Those are very critical devices. Also, rarely would you ever put those on third-party maintenance. Versus a switch that sits in an IDF closet that has some printers and computers hooked up, right? The importance of that firewall versus that switch in that IDF closet is a pretty significant difference. So when you start to like look at those devices and where do you want to invest and make sure you've got, top line, current generation, fully secure, all the above, security is going to be right up in front. Versus a device that is I just need a gig port with PoE capabilities or something like that, and it's connecting these devices. And if one of these ports goes down, I have hundreds of other ports I can just move it to. So reduces some of the complexity of it. One thing we've seen in the last, call it 2 years, between COVID, between supply chain issues, between all these things, is these refresh cycles got pushed out. So a 2020 refresh may have gotten pushed to 2021. And now we're at the end of 2021. We may not, the end user might not be able to get the product. So it might get pushed out to 2022.
Yep.
All in that cycle, there's maintenance that highly likely is being put on these devices. And whether the office complex that has all these devices is empty because no one's working there, or there's a refresh cycle on really old equipment. So you're kind of not getting what you want anyways. Everyone we find that we talk to needs options. So how can I, if we're not using the maintenance because no one's in the office, or it's really old equipment, I don't want to pay for it anyways, but my refresh cycle, I can't get the gear till next year anyways, I need options. And this, the OEMs don't give you options. It's great. Here's your option, which is expensive. So if we can create a plan and a step, even if it's a 3-month gap or 6 months or 12 months, so that you can take that OpEx and really tighten it up as little as possible, so you're not overpaying. It still might also help with the funding of these other projects or as you're moving budgets around. So our hope is to give you options. Don't do anything in terms of risk of your infrastructure and downtime and all those things that are still critical. You have to have those in place. But can we as an organization, can you as the rep, can we create these options to help mitigate those risks and keep that OpEx as tight as possible?
Yeah, that's really good. And talking about risk, and a question that we get a lot, and I know that was a topic you were getting a lot of questions on in a meeting recently, is who are the engineers? Who am I calling? Are these tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 people? How long is it going to take to get to them? What's your escalation process? And can you speak to that? How good is the quality on the back end when it comes to tech support?
Great question. Our goal to write, I'm a big fan of understanding incentive. When you understand incentive, magically you can predict the future. So incentive-wise, I know, and my team knows, as we talk about it in every meeting that we have, is how do we make diehard fans of PivIT and OneCall and all of our offerings? It's very simple. You have to over-service. You have to really go above and beyond. You have to beat your competitor in terms of that service and support, and you have to deliver on your promises. So those 2 things, when you're dealing with maintenance, are very important. So our goal is when a customer calls in and they have a problem, whatever that problem is, our goal is to solve it with the person who answers the phone or grabs the ticket. So if we can bring that level of engineer right out of the gates, right on day 1 of that ticket, without having to escalate, because that level of engineer is there available on day 1, on the first minute of that ticket, I believe they will be a customer for life. So if we can bypass all that escalation, the piece, which we
Sure.
have, but if they can bypass all that stuff in the middle, like, great, I got to escalate a tier 2 engineer, tier 3, whatever it might be, if we can bypass that and just solve it right out of the gates as quickly as possible, they're going to be a fan for life. So on the front end, whether you're talking compute, whether you're talking network, whether you're talking storage, our goal is to really remove that noise that happens in most tickets with most OEMs of the process, the escalation, the moving on, and just knock it out of the gates right out of day one. So that's our goal, was as everyone starts to see incentive, which you can see why our incentive is to overservice so that everyone loves us at the end of the ticket. We build all of our systems, platforms, and people around that mantra.
Perfect. Yeah, and I know, this one's titled 5 Reasons You Need Third-Party Maintenance, but, 6 comes to mind. And it's, the natural question is, well, why should I use PivIT? And to me, I think immediately of our sparing integrity program.
Yes. And that rolls over into, I was going to say, but I'm glad you brought the 6th question, is what kind of engineers am I getting, right? Mm-hmm. So the quality of engineers is super important. You're going to measure maintenance on 2 reasons. Do they have qualified guys on the back end to help me solve my issue? And then if there is an issue, did they have the gear in place to make sure the SLAs are hit? Which rolls right into PivIT's Sparing Integrity Program, or our SIP program. Our SIP program is, you'll find all of our customers will find, we're extremely transparent. When we say we're going to cover a device on a 4-hour contract, we'll prove it to them. We'll show them the serials on the depot and the mileage from the depot to that location. So, which is very easy to figure out. Can it hit within 4 hours? Can it happen in next business day? Can it do these things? What lengths did they go to in the onboarding process and understanding and digesting our configurations as a customer to make sure that they have the right pieces in place to hit that SLA? So if you promise a 4-hour SLA, okay, 1, do you have a depot that can do it? And 2, what's in that depot? So if I do have an issue, is it going to hit it? So our Sparing Integrity program, it's a very transparent window into all of our back-end operations, so that you can see the devices, the switches, the drives, the power supplies, the chassis, all those things that are in place, so that when we figure out, oh yeah, you're right, it is a chassis, it is a module, it is this, and it's at this location, you'll have it in a couple hours. Oh, and by the way, our drivers have GPS, so you can physically see where it's at. So it's no more this drop shipping, which is, I think, what we find most commonly in this industry. Because sparing, it's very expensive. It's expensive for PivIT to do this.
Of course.
But it matters, which goes back to integrity. It does matter. So that if it is that, I'm just not going to drop ship from some random person who may or may not have great quality or testing or any of this kind of stuff. I want to have it. I want my guys in operations to have their hands on it first before they get it to the depots, so that we know the vetting process. We know what happened to it. We know the history behind that device, so that when a replacement shows up, it's working, it's the right component, it's the right replacement, so that the issue we can close the ticket. Because I know if I close that ticket and there's green lights across all areas, again, going back to incentive, we want everyone to be huge raving fans of PivIT, OneCall, and all of our offerings.
Yeah, and that is a real thing, right? You and I have both been around this industry for a long time, and drop shipping does occur, and it has created problems. It certainly can. So yeah, that's a huge reason, to look at PivIT and essentially, use a customer, you can audit us whenever you want. Hey, where are my spares? Do you have them in place? Where are they? I'd like to see them, right? It's a great thing to bring up, once a quarter at the time of your renewal, right? Just to see, hey, how's everything going? Let's look at all the tickets. Let's look at the spares, right? It's just another aspect for, for the customer to check up on us on. Yeah. Well, that's 6. I mean, even a bonus 6 question. Did you have anything else?
I probably have a lot more, but
of course
I won't. We're going to leave room for round 2 when we do this again, when we fill in the gaps, if there's anything else. And obviously we want conversations. These are conversations to try and customize maintenance strategies for all of our clients, because everyone is different. There isn't they're never the same. Right. The pain points are different within every organization and every different market. And those are the areas where these conversations that we have, this is where we can shine, because we're going to present options that everyone else is not presenting, or we're going to be more clear about our logic and our thinking to make sure that our team and your team, we're all on the same page with all the devices that you guys have supported. So we love those conversations. We love talking about it. I'm not the most popular parent at Bring Your Parent to Work Day. There's a lot of cooler jobs than that, but I love what I do, and I love what our parents, or not what our parents, but our customers are saying about us. So
I love it. I love it. Well, Joe, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it. That's it. 5
thanks, Michael.
and a bonus 6 reasons why you need third-party maintenance.
Great.
Yep. All right, Joe, take care. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. All
All right,
right.
you got it. Bye.